Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our entrepreneurial series. Today, I'm very excited to introduce to you, or for many of you who already know, Mr. Gordy, who is the CEO of the Woodlands Financial Group. I, of course, am Jose Palafox, founder of Starfox Financial Services. We're going to go ahead and get started and have Gordy introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Gordy Bunch, founder of the Woodlands Financial Group. Started the company in 2001 and been a resident in the Woodlands since 1995. Really enjoy our community and building businesses.
Awesome. And also, you're ex-military, am I right? You did a little bit of time in the Coast Guard?
That's correct. I moved to the Woodlands directly off the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Hamilton. Nice. I left Adak, Alaska in the Bering Sea and landed here.
Awesome. Well, it took me a little longer to get here, but I am here, and I was ex-Air Force myself, so thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is a little bit about the early days of the Woodlands Financial Group. I know many people, when they see a successful person like you, they think it's just an overnight thing. I always tell people, yes, we're a 10-year overnight success. So tell us a little bit about the early days. And I know you were with a big financial group at the time, and you decided to start the Woodlands Financial Group, and everybody thinks it just took off from that point, and it was all easy sailing the whole way.
Yeah, so I founded the company in 2001. I'd left Prudential, which is a company everybody's heard of.
Sure.
So jumping off the piece of the rock to get my own piece of the pie, it's very lean. So I leave a six-figure salary and benefits to we have no health insurance, we have no income, and you're starting a business from scratch. So very early on, it's managing all your finances personally and business-wise. And you really don't make a lot of money the first 3 years of any business. And, it's about reinvesting in the people and making sure you're committed to success rather than near-term financial gain.
And I have a question for you. Did you have a plan B? I mean, were you saying this is going to be working, but if it doesn't, then I have exit strategy here?
So I do a lot of advice for young entrepreneurs. And I said, well, plan B is your first failure. You have to go into business where failure is not an option. And if you're thinking about what else you would do if this doesn't work, you already lost.
That's great. And I kind of knew that about you, so that's why I asked that. There's the old story, right, of the general that gets off the boats and he's conquering a piece of property or a piece of land, another country. He gets off the boats and he says, burn the boats, because there's no other option, right? You either win the war or you're done.
Right.
You're not going home. So I believe that very much so, and that's why I wanted to ask that question. So you didn't have any other option. You started with, from what I read, about $10,000 of your own money or some money that got lent to you. Is that correct?
$10,000 that I had saved over the time I was in the Coast Guard.
Awesome. And from that, you are now how big?
Well, over 600 million.
600 million. Awesome. So you went from 10,000 to 600 million. You're a success. Obviously, here in the Woodlands, we know a lot about you, and a lot of people admire what you've done. But tell us a little bit about the early days. You talk about how you had to reinvest money early on. But what kinds of things that you thought were going to go a certain way maybe didn't go like you planned?
So what people always over-focus on, in my opinion, is their business plan. And I think when I teach people about how to launch in business, I start with them. Your personal finances are more critical than your business plan. If you can't afford to live, you can't afford to go into business. So it's about managing your personal finances. And for us, that meant we drove older cars. We lived in our first house. We didn't take extravagant trips. We carried no credit card debt. So what allowed us to get through those lean periods is we were lean at home. And that provided us the opportunity to go low. And within the business early on, it's the same thing. If you don't have personal financial discipline, how are you going to have business financial discipline?
That's correct.
And so, if we had one stapler and it had to be shared by 10 people, because I don't need 10 staplers, that's how cheap I was.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, when I started Starfox Financial, it started from the home, right? I had a home office. There was a lot of overhead, and I shared my stapler with the kids and everybody else at home. So absolutely, I completely understand that.
Our first office was a shared office with my brother-in-law. Neither one of us could actually afford our own office.
Right. And that's a great point for you guys out there just starting out. Sometimes small businesses, they start out and they think they have to make this big splash. They have to spend all this money, and they forget that it's okay to start slow and a little bit at a time. Save the money for the future and get by those first early years, because most businesses do fail within the first 3 to 5 years. That statistics show.
And a lot of it comes down to overdoing it, right? I left Prudential, our offices were extravagant.
Right.
The office I built out here, I had auction furniture. There's still stickers on the filing cabinets from the auction I bought it at. And, I remember people coming to me and saying, wow, this is really nice. I'm like, you know what? Furniture doesn't make you money.
No.
And that was reinforced. I got an opportunity to meet Warren Buffett's, one of his companies in the insurance industry. And it was the ugliest office I ever had been in. And I asked the guy who was running it, what's the deal with the furniture? He goes, furniture doesn't make you money. I was like, wow, you're right. I said, but this is like government furniture. This is a steel desk. I haven't seen this since the 50s. It's like, that's where we got it from.
Or the 80s when I was in the Air Force. That's for sure. We still had steel desks.
Yeah. So, you can overdo it on aesthetics. Yes. And what really matters is what service or product are you providing? Is there a market for it? And are you committed to delivering on your promises?
Yeah. And I think there's a balance of that. I know your office now is fairly nice. And I even saw you have some kind of Chinese Army guy or something in your office.
Terracotta Warrior.
Terracotta Warrior, that's it. One of the things that entrepreneurs should understand is there is a balance. For instance, in our office, if we had really beat up furniture and try to save a little money, it's going to be a little difficult for somebody to hand you a $5 million check, right? But there is a balance. You don't have to have, a 25-foot high rise with windows and overlooking everything and gold-plated things. There's no need for that, because it's just the cost. One of the things you find out real quick when you're an entrepreneur and starting out coming from corporate America, and I know you know this because you went through it, is everything now costs money. It's not just call the department and get something, right? Whether it be the phone lines, whether it be the paper, the pens, the pencils. And so when Gordy talks about keeping your money tight, it's absolutely essential, because nobody's just going to come up and make that up for you unless you get another sale, right?
Yeah. I had somebody put it this way: he said, treat your nickels like they're manhole covers.
Absolutely.
And a manhole cover's pretty heavy.
Pretty heavy. So
don't just toss.
Don't let it go. Don't let it go as much as easily, I guess that would be the word to say. So you had some success early on. What do you think you would do different sooner now that you've been through it and had some success?
It's hard to say. We've never had a non-growth year in 18 years, so it's hard to look back and say, okay, what would I do differently? Not to say that everything we've done has been successful. We've had a couple acquisitions that went south. Probably would have done a better job on moral due diligence on not just the acquisition business, but the people that were behind it. We've had some bad experiences with immoral people. Part of that comes down to probably having more of an expanded management board earlier. I was a one-man executive for a long time. And so things really started to grow at an exponential rate when I started bringing in and trusting other people. So I do say it's a lot of larger companies, mid-sized companies, or startup companies. The key to success, yes, the founder, the visionary is going to be a driving force, but it's also the people you bring and surround yourself with. Yeah,
and actually, you mentioned something in a video. It's you talked about right person, wrong job. You mentioned that earlier, and believe me, when I heard that, it just rung so true to me that I have to take a look at my company also and say, okay, is this person really in the right position? Right. And if they're not, can we find something that will be more beneficial to the company? I mean, when I heard that, it just bells went off. I literally went home and started writing some things down about what I should do. So I definitely appreciate that. And going forward, you had some success. You got the right people. I do want to mention to everybody that I'm a one-man shop for many, many years, right? And that same thing, you know, how do you let go, right? You have to let go of your baby that you've built. What did you look for in the people that you're adding to your team?
So everybody's got different personalities, different strengths, and one of the things you have to identify is what's critical in those roles. And so the E-Myth, Dr. Gerber's book, talks about a lot about the technicians versus the entrepreneurials, and I looked at our structure and said, okay, here's our long-term infrastructure, and day one I'm wearing every hat. What am I looking for in somebody that can fill these roles in the out years? And so, my number two, Catherine, she came in. I hired her. I didn't know if she and I would click, so I kind of ignored her for 6 months. And what I wanted her. She's our chief operating officer. I wanted her to analyze the operations of our business and bring me her conclusions without me tainting it with my own opinion. Because what I wanted in that role is I needed to make sure I had someone who was like-minded and saw things the same way I did. And so after 6 months, I called her in and said, okay, give me your report on our people, our processes, our procedures, and I'll do one as well, and then we'll swap. That way I'm getting your untainted opinion. And amazingly, we were spot on. So one, you have to have alignment in vision and how you view things. And then when you're starting to look at the other positions that are key, our chief marketing officer happens to be my brother. Now, he's been there a couple of years. He's very creative. He's very different than I am. We both know that his strengths are the things that he's able to do, and he knows what my strengths are. So you need some complementary personalities and differences of opinions. And so we when I look at our executive team, we have really half of it's high analyticals and the other half are high creatives. Awesome. And so you have the emotional balance there for both spectrums, and it's a healthy debate when we get together.
Yeah, and that's something that you should do for those listening. You do want to get people, and one thing I always say is you want to get people that are even smarter than you. Right? Add team players that'll actually get you to grow faster and overcome problems. Right. One of the things that I've had myself to learn is that as I add team members is to be willing to listen to the other people's ideas, because I don't have all the ideas, and obviously you didn't have all the ideas, but you're the leader. You can make that by getting sound advice from your team members and then creating a better company.
Yep.
That's correct. Now, switching gears on you a little bit, Gordy, is I know you're a man of faith, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I've had a couple people over the years that were young men that said, hey, how do I keep my faith and still be a businessman? Because they think that as a businessman, it's all about money, it's all about numbers, and they think there's a separation there. I mean, for me, there's not, but I'd like to hear how you feel about that.
Well, if you don't have any core morality, right? Ours might be faith. Somebody else might have something else that they lean on. But for me, God, Jesus, all of the gospel is a grounding. And integrity is born out of some sense of morality. Right. And if you don't have integrity as a business owner, you're not going to make it. And if all you focus on is the end result in your pocket, you're not going to make it. So, for me, we give back to different faith-based groups, and whether that's our school or our church or FCA or Young Life, and really and it's kind of the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing, right? So we give some money to ministry, and we hope they do the right thing with it. Sure. But that's just us having to let go of it. But really, the reason I wasn't looking for a plan B is this is what I thought I was supposed to do, and if it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. And so I lean on that trust in God that, if this is where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do, I don't need a plan B.
That's right.
So at the core of not worrying is faith. And if that doesn't work out, well, God will lead me to the next thing.
That's right. And actually, that's a wonderful way to put it. I've mentioned that to people in the past, is that there is no different separation between businessman Gordy, for example, and faithful Gordy, and Jose Palafox, businessman, and Jose Palafox, Christian, right? There's really no difference. It tends to be out there that people think that you have to separate that, right?
Look, I think you have to incorporate it. So if you come to my office, you're going to hear the message playing on our surround sound. Mm-hmm. That's a Christian rock band radio station on Pandora. Nice. Some people were like, well, we really like your music. And I'm like, well, I really don't care. Because if I can have God in the background and some of that seeps into them, I have an active ministry, and some people may come to faith out of that, or some people may just be annoyed by my music. I really don't care. Yeah. But you need that core, because when you get down to it, you're going to come into business circumstances where you're going to find that you have to tell somebody something they don't want to hear. And, a weaker, less faithful person will avoid that conversation, or will make a decision that materially benefits them or their business when they know it's the wrong thing. And so I eat a lot of losses. If someone makes a mistake and it's on us, we end up doing the right thing.
Right.
And that's from our financial accounting down. Bring me the bad news. I don't care. I'd rather know the truth.
Right.
And don't hide anything from me or anybody else. We're a transparent organization, and doing the right thing matters.
That's right. And doing the right thing not only money wise, but also how you treat people, how you interact with people. One of the things that I know I'm very much part of our company is our slogan is faith, family, finance. One of the things I tell our clients and we talk about is that it doesn't matter how much money you have. It really doesn't. Once it all comes down to how many times we just talked about that actor, right? That all that money in the world and he looks like he's 100, he's 36 years old. But if you don't have a core foundation to something other than money, then sooner or later that's going to blow up in your face.
Well, if you over-focus on any one thing, that becomes your God.
That's right. That's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. Excellent. Well, what I'd like to move on to now is obviously the chairman at the township, and we're going into an election year, and I know you're going to be running for the next one. But I'd like to find out more about what's going on today. We just talked about the swan boats, obviously, and what do you see for the township going forward?
So economically, we've had a pretty good turnaround since the oil crunch. The last few years have been pretty flat on sales tax growth, hotel growth, and property tax growth. Those are our three revenue streams aside from programs. This year, going into our budget, which actually starts next week, we're looking at pretty healthy rebound on sales tax. Hotel tax is way up. And then we offset property tax by those gains. So we put less of a burden on our residents. We're in the middle of an incorporation planning study. So long-term vision of the community. When Mr. Mitchell founded it 44 years ago, he had designed it to be acquired by Houston. And of course, we had a little rebellion here in the 90s after Kingwood was annexed. And the community overwhelmingly does not want to become part of the city of Houston. So what we're working on right now as a board is laying out the transition plan of the eventuality of putting it to a vote, where the community will get an option to choose whether it wants to become its own city or stay a township. And, we're not finished with that study, but the idea is we present the pros, the cons, the benefits, the new powers that the community would have. What does that mean to their daily lives, and then what is the actual cost? I look at it as, ratifying our Constitution because, we won the war against England, say, City of Houston.
Sure.
But we haven't ratified our state.
Right.
We're in an interim period, which has a long tail, right? We don't have to become a city until 2050.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is we can't stay as township forever, if I understand it correctly.
So essentially, we have preordained that if we don't do anything, we revert to the ETJ rights of the city of Houston and the city of Conroe. And even though new laws have been passed that would somewhat prevent us from being annexed, they don't apply to us because the contract we signed with the city of Houston and the city of Conroe predate the new law. And so right now we're sending 1/16 of our sales tax to both the city of Conroe and the city of Houston to not be annexed. We will still have to pay that until that contract expires. So, a lot of people have a lot of false sense of security. There's some new things that we found that, the initial trigger for planning had to do with infrastructure. We've had a lot of debate over major thoroughfares through the Woodlands. Right now, as a township, we have no vote, no say in what happens to our infrastructure. It's a municipality that changes. The infrastructure becomes the authority of the community. So that was our trigger. Subsequent to that, we've been through 3 flooding events, right? Hurricane Harvey being the largest.
I got pulled out on a boat out of my house.
and we're glad that you're safe.
Yeah.
We fared better than most communities, but we still had 700 structures underwater.
Right.
And as a township, we are disqualified from disaster aid.
Oh.
So here you are in the middle of a natural disaster, and because of the structure of our government, we have to be passive and ride shotgun on disaster aid recovery.
Right.
So, that's another detriment of our current form of governance is we're not in the best position to take care of ourselves. And when you look at it from when are we in a position of authority to take care of ourselves, do we do a better job than others? So we have our own fire department.
Right.
It's number one in the United States. It's the highest rated fire department. So when people say, well, let's keep everything the way it is, like, wait a minute. Everything this community does is ranked top 10 in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take on infrastructure, we take on law enforcement, or we take on anything,
right,
we're going to do it at the top level because that's what our community expects. And for me, I'd rather trust my neighbors than the city of Conroe, the city of Houston, and a plethora of county commissioners and county judges. Because the fragmented way that we're organized, there isn't any one entity ultimately currently in charge. Right. And most people would tell you it's us.
Right.
And we'll tell you it's us here, them there, this other guy way over here. Yeah. And it's kind of
every piece is divided up as to who gets what.
Right.
No, I think that'd be wonderful. The one thing that I do hear is the pushback that I hear is that it's going to be way more expensive for the residents. What do you say to that?
I say it's an unqualified opinion. There has never been a qualified tax study. Right. And the study that was done several years ago was wholly inadequate. Mm-hmm. All the projected revenues that they projected were static. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the revenue that the community had in 2011 versus today, mm-hmm. it's about 50% off.
Wow.
So if you want to hold up costs versus revenues that are less than we currently have, yeah, you can inflate a number. But the true cost is, what are the cost of us not doing something, right? Do you want to have a highway running through the town? Do you want to have a community that can go through a Hurricane Harvey event and not be put in a direct position to respond to the needs of its residents? Do you trust people who do not even live here to take care of you as much as they take care of others? And I don't. I frankly believe that our neighbors are highly talented, and we have a talent pool in the Woodlands that we could be self-governed and do an absolute fantastic job. The other thing that people miss is the township tax is 1/10 of your property tax. Mm-hmm. So that means 90% of your property tax bill is not us.
Right, it's everybody else.
So we're talking about fractions.
Yeah.
If your township tax bill goes up 10%, that's 2 cents per $100 value.
Yeah.
You spend more valeting your car at Market Street or the mall, right, or coffee after a month.
Yeah. Or the other thing that I found is, and I'm originally from California, so I've only been a resident for about 3 years, is that if you just move into Harris County, a lot of the taxes are much higher. Right. So even though it might raise a little bit, it's definitely still well within line with what we're seeing around us.
Our tax rate at 23 cents a hundred mm-hmm. is more than half less than Houston. Yeah. It's City of Conroe, it's almost half of City of Conroe. Mm-hmm. And so what people look at is they think that, we're automatically going to jump up to that level. Well, it's not the case. Mm-hmm. We already have a better fire department than anyone else in our county, and our tax rate's not that high.
Right.
So we were a master plan community, which affords us a little bit better control of how we're doing things. And, the parks and recs infrastructure were all developed out as the community was being built out. We've set aside capital reserves for the replenishment of all of our assets. So we have a very low debt organization and a high reserve organization that we can confidently stand out there and say, look, we're going to have stable tax rates. And the best part of what we did with our legislation this last cycle is we added a covenant that did not exist. So, doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. Because everybody made this argument the cost was going to be so high and it's going to be unaffordable. So when we got into our legislation, I said, look, I want to add a covenant that requires the township, if they put this on a ballot, they also have to put on the initial tax rate. Right. So the voters have to approve the cost.
They know what they're going to be paying.
And it can't be higher than that number. Right. And that's never existed.
Wow.
Nobody has ever put legislation out there that gives that much information up front.
So like in our business and your business, full disclosure.
Absolute disclosure, right? Yeah. ADV2 form.
Yeah.
Making sure they know what they're going to pay in advisory fees and that they're breakpoints.
Yeah.
So for me, it's, look, when we get to the point where we're finished with the study and we've had the public hearings. If it makes sense to put on a ballot, they have to vote yes, I want to incorporate into a city, but they also have to vote yes, I approve the initial tax rate, so that everybody can look at it as, does this make sense for me? And the one thing that I think will help with our seniors, because we had a lot of folks on fixed income that were concerned about long-term property tax growing them out of their house.
Sure.
As a city, we can freeze their taxes. As a township, we cannot.
Right.
So one of the things we're putting into our plan is, if we, as we look at our planning, we're going to look at a tax freeze for 65 and older.
Right.
So if they vote to incorporate and approve the tax rate, they're frozen.
Well, as you can see, all great information and wonderful. One of the things I have is, as far as the future, I know that the Woodlands has been growing with new homes on a regular basis, but we're getting close to final build out here. There's not a lot of new homes that are going to be available to be built. How does that affect what we're doing in the future, and what other great things are coming?
Yeah, so 44-year-old community, we don't have the ability to expand our boundaries, and we have less than 4,000 housing units left to construct. And so, that does a couple things. One, it will create redevelopment. So when you look at the older villages that are 40 plus years old, you'll look at redevelopment plans on how do we look at refreshing these environments.
Right.
You see that in other cities where there's less ability to expand or grow. So you'll have to reimagine some of these areas where people will be buying homes for really the lot value.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll look at replotting and redesigning and rebuilding to a newer look.
Right.
So there'll be a lot of that will occur over time. The other thing is, we still have a lot of commercial pockets that will still be developing over time. And when you have a high amenity community, a low tax community, it's going to drive values up for the real estate. Yeah. So,
well, one of the things I tell my friends in California is that they say, "Oh, property taxes are so much higher in Texas as opposed to California." Of course, they don't talk about all the other taxes in California.
Right.
And I always tell them the same thing: is that, yeah, but I see my taxes, right? I see the parks, I see the bike paths, I see the roads, I see the number one fire department, I see what I'm paying for, and that's the one thing that when you look at the Woodlands, that's how I look at it. Is, yeah, my rate's a little higher than I was used to. That's right. Okay. But I see where it's going.
Well, it's even better than that. One thing that people underappreciate is the vast majority of the Woodlands eliminated their homeowners association dues when we became a township. We replaced a non-tax deductible association due with a tax deductible tax. And the amount of money that an average resident pays in township tax is less than they used to pay for the homeowners association.
Wow.
So the tax equivalent yield of our structure provides a gain to all residents. And the amenities are still being maintained and refreshed, just like they would have been if the association had stayed in place.
Yeah, that's another thing that's really important. I know I've seen many cities where they have these great parks and they're not being maintained.
Right.
They fall apart. They become places where you don't want to go. And that's very important. As you see it out here in the Woodlands every day, people are out there working, maintaining everything. And that's key. It's not just having a park, it's maintaining it. It's not just having a community, it's maintaining it. You just mentioned the fire department, but the police department does a great job. I know we still have the horse people in the mall area. So no, I'm excited about what the future of the Woodlands hold. What do you see as far as economically? I know we had the downturn in the oil, and it's kind of flattened out and done okay now. We've added the Exxon campus and some others. What do you see going forward? Is any big things coming in that you see?
So, like I said, we still have a lot of commercial development to occur. That's going to bring more daytime employment, more daytime activity, helps with sales tax revenue, helps stabilize local businesses. We do see that the Supreme Court ruling on sales tax could help insulate us. There had been a large concern that online sales were going to directly impact future sales tax revenues. So now there's a ruling out there, and Texas is working on how they're going to implement the strategy on that. So if we end up knowing that the online sales will still generate sales taxes if it was in a brick and mortar, that further insulates us financially. I mentioned it, but I think it's worth re-mentioning. our board does a 5-year budget,
Mhm.
and we have a 30-year capital plan. So when we say we have reserves set aside for replenishing the parks, the pools, the ladder trucks for the fire department,
Sure.
it's all pre-funded.
Wow.
I came onto our board in 2012. We have paid off over half of our debt. The community today has very limited debt left.
Mhm.
We have a debt redemption fund that can help take down those debt as those call dates come up. So we have capacity as a community to grow. Some of the things we're looking at that would be new and exciting for the community, and I think they're kind of the final pieces, would be our Woodlands Performing Arts Theater and our Woodlands Museum. And if you haven't seen the site rendering of our future City Hall, right down the street from here, actually, on Grogan's Mill.
Yeah.
It's a 11 acre, 13 acre site that would be anchored by the city, having its new City Hall, but then on either side of a public plaza, a performing arts theater and a museum.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I'm excited because that's only a block or two away, right? It's a couple blocks down the road.
And you can be excited, but it might raise your rent.
That's true.
Because now you'll be closer to a new cool amenity,
That is true.
and nobody will get lost. Be like, look, I'm 2 blocks down from the museum.
Yeah.
So as we look at what completes a community, the cultural arts has been lacking. We've been blessed to have Glade come in and create a gallery and a museum, and
Which I'm gonna jumpstart a second for. So that's the very first time I met you was at the Glade Center.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I find wonderful about you, Gordy, is that you're very approachable. You didn't know me from Adam. We were able to talk, and then actually set a meeting where I got to learn a little bit more about you, and you got to learn about me, and then which led to this meeting and this video. So I want to commend you because you've been a great success in business. You're obviously a great success at the township. Yet you took a guy like me and said hi, and we're willing to talk. So I really appreciate that.
no, look, I'm still just Gordy, and I look at it as I'm not better than anybody else, and I don't know everybody, and like you said earlier, you can get great ideas from anywhere.
Yes.
And so always open to meeting with people and learning what they have as concerns or issues or opportunities. And I think most people that ultimately have sustainable success, they stay the same as they were before. The friends that I really have as core friends, I had them 20 years ago. We still get together as families. We go on vacations together. We still, Michelle and I haven't changed. Now, I used to be really, really, really cheap. Like, I wouldn't buy iced tea cheap because to me it was
You
flavored.
use the water with the lemon?
It was flavored water. And I'm like, water's free, And you go to Europe and they charge you for
They
water.
do.
My kids are like, can I have a soda? I'm like, yes, it's cheaper than the water.
Yeah, beer.
Well, that's
the beer is
exactly.
cheaper.
The
The
beer's
water was
cheaper than
$3. The beer was 50 cents.
right. So it's I've evolved a little bit there. Paying extra for cheese used to be a challenge for me, but if you're grounded and you know who you are, the amount of money in your bank account doesn't change who you are principally. And it's allowed us to do more things, be more generous with different groups, support more nonprofits. I don't have the time to be out there and be the hands and feet, but I have the ability to help fund some of those things. And I think that business is a great door opener to a lot of things, but you have to start off as a grounded individual that has integrity, that commits not to failing, and that doesn't see it as their identity.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'd like to finish with is just that when Gordy talks about integrity, everybody that I know that I've talked to him about it, it's not just verbiage. He actually does live it. And as an entrepreneur, you're starting on a business, don't just go around and say, I have these values and this mission statement and look at who we are. You have to actually show it. You have to live it. People will see it through it pretty quickly if you don't. And that's one of the things I will tell young entrepreneurs is don't just put a mission statement out there and think that's it, right? Don't say we have these core values. I've seen it in a lot of companies where you walk in and you see the core values on the wall and you go, that's not true, because I can feel it. I can see it with the people that they're not following those values. So I commend you on that, is that not only do you talk about integrity, but you definitely show it, and I definitely see it. And I really appreciate you giving us time to talk to our people out there today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And it was wonderful.
Thank you.